So today's a special day. I'm going to take you along with me. Today is the first of the month. So today's the day that I get all of my rent checks. So right now we're going to go through and I've got a spreadsheet where I keep all my tenants on one side of my screen, and then on another side of the screen I have my QuickBooks Online where I'm able to debit everybody's rent. So we're going to go through each person and we're going to pull their rent, which makes the first the happiest day of the month for me. A lot of times people just think about landlording as pulling rents and collecting checks, but really the important thing is adding value. So over the last month and over the next month, I'm adding value to each one of these people, which is why they're paying me rent, and why, if we look on here, a lot of these people have signed multiple leases with me because they've agreed that the value that I provide is worth having their rent debited every month. So how do we get to that point? And I think that's one of the discussions that a lot of people don't think about when they're thinking about real estate investing, is their value proposition and how they're adding value to people. So there's really 4 value propositions, and we'll talk about each one of these. And if you want to talk about how to set goals with your real estate investing, check out my course in the link down below. It's only $25, and I talk a lot about how to set goals, because a lot of times when you start real estate investing, you don't really know. You want to make money, but you don't really understand how or what goals you're going to set, and that's an important thing to think about first. But as you go in line with reaching your financial goals for financial independence, part of it is going to be deciding how you provide value to people. So with the 4 value propositions, they go anywhere from more for much more to less for much less, and we can talk a little bit about each one of those and where they fall in line with your real estate investing goals. So if you're talking about a more for more value proposition, you're really talking about like luxury or higher end goods, or something that is delivering an obscene amount of value that people want to pay large amounts of money for. So in the car world, you could think about this as like Maseratis or Rolls Royces, something where it's a super high performance car, a super luxurious car, and so people are going to pay way more than the nuts, bolts, and metal put together would be by themselves, because it's such a luxury item. In real estate, you've got, I think, the big thing that you would be talking about there are Airbnbs could fall under more for much more value. For example, I have an Airbnb where the rents on that thing are way more than it would be as a traditional rental. Even though it's in a beach town, the more for much more value proposition is largely because people can rent it short term. So because of that short term rental with a pool close to the beach, as a short term rental, people are willing to pay a lot more money than someone who's local to that beach town, who would probably be using it just as a place to stay. So I'm providing more for much more money. I'm getting much more money by providing more value with it being a short term rental. Then you have a more for the same value proposition. So you're offering people more money but charging the same price. And I would say that the rental houses, I'm collecting rent right now on a portfolio of rental houses in a small Midwestern town. I would argue that with these, I provide a more for the same value proposition. And part of the reason I do that is because when I'm buying houses, I do a comparative market analysis, or a CMA, and I look at what houses are renting for in that town, the prices that they're renting for, and then I try to buy, I look at what houses are for rent, how much they're renting for, and then when I buy houses, I try to make sure I buy them so that I can provide a nicer house than is usually on the market at that price for the same price as traditional rents. So I try to provide at the same rent price, I try to provide more value than the competitors are doing. And that would be a more for the same value proposition. There's also the same for less value proposition. And I would say a few of my houses in this market would be a same for less value proposition. And the same for less is where you have the same quality as what's being offered, but you're offering your product at a lesser price for that same quality. And I would say where a lot of mine are a same for less value proposition would be like with a garage apartment, for example. With a garage apartment, the main house I'm probably offering on a more for the same value proposition. It's a little nicer than comparable rentals, but it's offered at the same price. But if I have like a garage apartment or a backyard living space or an additional living unit, that one is probably not quite as nice as there's probably similar to the average rental in the area, but I'll be able to offer it at a lesser price. So I have the same quality, but I'm offering it at a lesser price. Part of the reason I'm able to do this is because I'm already renting out the main unit. So when I rent out the additional living space, I am able to offer it at a lower price. The last value proposition is the less for much less value proposition. With the less for much less value proposition, you're offering a lesser offering, but at a huge discount. So think of in the business world as like your Dollar Generals or Dollar Tree stores. You're not getting quality products. You're not getting anything, super nice. But it's you're not getting something super nice, but when you purchase with the less for much less value proposition, you're getting a huge deal, so you're willing to accept the lower quality. I wouldn't say that any of my houses are a less for much less value proposition, but you can see this in rental houses where there's extreme deferred maintenance. Landlords haven't taken care of homes for a long time, and so sometimes maybe they'll just offer them very cheaply to get them rented out. So the tenant understands that they're getting less value, but they're also paying a much lower price. So they're willing to accept that less for much less value proposition. Then you have what's called the impossible value proposition. Next, you have the impossible value proposition. The impossible value proposition is more for less. And this is where a lot of people, when they first start real estate investing, they think they're going to be able to give people the more for less value proposition. And it's just not possible. You can't offer people more than they would get anywhere else for less than they would pay anywhere else. If you can, you found a great market to get into, but since it's just not sustainable over time, business people and marketers would call this the impossible value proposition. I think then you could also talk about another unsustainable value proposition would be the less for more value proposition, and that's when you're talking about swindlers and cheats at this point, because if you're offering people less but charging them more, you're basically just taking advantage of people and you're not creating real value. So those are the four value propositions. You have the more for much more, which would be your luxury items. You have the more for the same, which would be where I think most of my rentals, I try to put them with that value proposition where I'm giving people more for their money. It's the same money they would pay other places, but I try to give them more for it. You have the same for less, where people have comparable rentals. They rent them out for less money. And then the less for much less, where you're giving people a huge discount, but they realize that they're not getting a ton of value for that money. So value propositions are important when you're thinking about what your goals in real estate investing are. And when you're first getting started, you really need to not think about deals. You need to think about what your goals are before you get started. So check out the course that I have down below for setting goals in real estate investing, and use that to help decide what it is you're trying to accomplish with your real estate investing. So that way you can take this talk about value propositions, figure out how you're going to use the value propositions available to reach your goals with your real estate. So hope that helps.